While my daughter was in the hospital, struggling through the pain of childbirth, her husband was nowhere to be found. He wasn't by her side, holding her hand or whispering words of comfort. No, he was in Las Vegas, gambling away money he had stolen in her name. I thought I was coming to welcome my first grandchild with joy, but instead I discovered betrayal so deep it shook me to my core. My son-in-law had abandoned his wife at the very moment she needed him most. He had taken loans under her name, drained accounts, and wasted everything on his selfish addiction, but he underestimated one thing: a father's resolve. I made sure his cards stopped working that very night, and from that moment, his world began to collapse. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The hum of the airplane engines was steady, almost soothing, but my heart was racing too fast to feel calm. For the first time in years, I felt something like joy. My daughter Anna was about to bring new life into the world, and I was flying to meet my very first grandchild. I stared out the window at the endless sky, clouds drifting beneath us like waves. In my hands, I held an old photograph. My late wife, Martha, in a hospital bed, cradling Anna the day she was born. Her smile outshone the fluorescent lights, her hair messy, her eyes glowing with pride. I had sworn that day to protect them both, and though Martha was gone, I was determined to keep that promise now for Anna and her baby. The flight attendant passed, asking if I needed anything. I shook my head. All I needed was to see my daughter's face when I surprised her. She didn't know I was coming. I wanted to walk into that hospital room and watch her eyes light up the way they used to when she was little, running into my arms after school. In my carry-on sat a gift I had carved myself, a wooden baby rattle. Simple oak, polished smooth, with a tiny star engraved on the handle. The same design I had once made for Anna when she was a baby. It felt like carrying a piece of family history across the sky, a bridge between generations. As the pilot announced our descent, I tightened my grip on the photo and whispered to Martha in my heart, "I'll be there for her. I won't fail her." I had no idea how much those words would be tested in the hours ahead. The city lights blurred past as my taxi pulled up to the hospital entrance. My chest tightened with anticipation. For hours, I'd imagined this moment, walking into the maternity ward, seeing Anna's smile, holding her hand while she brought my grandchild into the world. I paid the driver quickly, clutching the small suitcase in one hand and the wooden rattle in the other. The automatic doors slid open, and instantly the sterile scent of antiseptic and fresh linens filled my lungs. Hospitals have a way of swallowing sound, of making every footstep feel heavy. My heart pounded as I followed the blue signs toward the maternity wing. At the reception desk, a nurse with kind eyes looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said, breathless. "My daughter, Anna Wilson. She's having a baby tonight." Her expression softened. "Room 218. She's been asking if anyone was coming." The word stung more than she knew. If anyone was coming. Where was Michael? This was his moment, his duty. A husband should never leave his wife wondering if she would face childbirth alone. I signed my name in the visitor log, my hands trembling as I clipped the badge to my shirt. Each step toward that hallway felt heavier, echoing with memories of Martha, of promises made long ago. The elevator doors opened, and a wave of beeping monitors and hushed voices greeted me. Nurses moved briskly, fathers paced anxiously, and somewhere down the hall a newborn wailed its first cry. My throat tightened with emotion. Soon, that cry would belong to Anna's child. But as I walked closer to room 218, a strange unease crawled up my spine. I couldn't explain it, just a father's intuition. Something was missing. Something wasn't right. I reached the door, paused, and whispered a silent prayer. Then I pushed it open, expecting to see joy, maybe even tears of happiness. Instead, I saw my daughter lying pale and exhausted on the bed. Her hand clutched the sheet, her forehead damp with sweat, and beside her, an empty chair. The place where her husband should have been. For a long moment I just stood in the doorway, frozen. Anna turned her head toward me, her face pale but her eyes shining when she saw me. "Dad?" Her voice cracked, equal parts relief and exhaustion. I hurried to her side, set the wooden rattle down on the table, and took her hand in both of mine. "I'm here, sweetheart. I made it. I wasn't going to let you do this alone." Her lips curved into a weak smile, but the way she squeezed my hand told me everything. She had been afraid no one would come. I glanced again at the chair beside her bed, empty, cold, lifeless. My jaw tightened. "Where's Michael?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though a storm brewed inside me. Anna looked away toward the window. He couldn't make it right now. Something came up with work." "Work?" My daughter was in labor, about to bring his child into the world, and he was working. My chest burned with anger, but I forced it down. She didn't need my rage. Not now. I smoothed a strand of hair from her damp forehead. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't have to go through this without him. You deserve better." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Please, Dad, don't be upset. He doesn't handle hospitals well." "Doesn't handle hospitals well?" I repeated softly, almost to myself. This wasn't about hospitals. This was about priorities. And right now, Michael's weren't here. The machines beeped steadily, filling the silence between us. I pressed her hand gently, forcing my voice calm. "Don't you worry about anything. I'm here now. You won't be alone." But inside, as I looked at that empty chair, my teeth clenched. Something was wrong. Something more than a husband who didn't like hospitals. Because no man who loved his wife would ever leave her side at a moment like this. I pulled the chair close to her bed and sat down, still holding her hand. Her skin was clammy, her grip weak, but the look in her eyes, that was what broke me. It was the look of a woman who felt abandoned. I forced a smile. "You're strong, Anna, stronger than you know. But you don't need to be strong alone. I'm here." She let out a shaky laugh, one that dissolved quickly into a sigh. "I didn't think you'd come, Dad. I didn't want to trouble you." "Trouble me?" I shook my head, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, you're my daughter. There's nothing more important than being here for you." Her lips quivered. For a moment, I thought she'd finally tell me the truth, but instead, she looked down at the blanket, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael said he'd be here soon. He just has things to take care of." The hesitation in her voice cut deeper than any words could. She was defending him. Even as she lay in pain, even as she faced this moment alone, I wanted to demand answers, to shout, "What's more important than being here right now?" But I swallowed the anger. This wasn't the time to explode. This was the time to protect her, so instead I squeezed her hand gently. "Don't think about him. Focus on you. Focus on that baby. I'll stay by your side until it's done. You won't go through another second of this alone, I promise." Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "Thank you, Dad." I nodded, but as I sat there listening to the steady beeping of the monitors, my mind was anything but calm. Because behind her brave face, I saw the truth. She was covering for him, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Michael was doing, it wasn't just work. The door opened quietly, and a nurse stepped in, her shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. She checked the monitor, noted the readings, and adjusted the IV drip with practiced hands. "How are we feeling tonight, Anna?" she asked gently. "Tired," Anna whispered, her voice thin. "That's to be expected. You're doing well," the nurse reassured her, before turning to me with a polite smile. "It helps to have family close." I nodded. "I'm glad I made it in time." My eyes flicked to the empty chair, and though I tried to hide it, my jaw clenched. The nurse's gaze followed mine, lingering a fraction too long. She hesitated, as if weighing her words, then lowered her voice slightly. "Your daughter's been brave, very brave. She's been through most of this on her own." My heart sank. "On her own?" I asked carefully. The nurse adjusted the blanket around Anna, who had closed her eyes for a moment, as though pretending to sleep. The nurse leaned closer to me, her tone discreet. "I don't want to overstep, sir, but I haven't seen her husband here, not for days." Her words hit me like a hammer. Days. My fists curled in my lap. "Thank you," I managed to say, keeping my voice steady. She gave me a sympathetic look and slipped quietly out of the room. I stared at Anna, her eyes still shut, though I suspected she had heard every word. She was too proud, too loyal, to admit the truth aloud. But now I knew. Michael hadn't just stepped out for an errand. He hadn't just been delayed by work. He had chosen to leave her here, chosen to let her fight through the fear and pain of childbirth without him. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against my hand, my teeth gritted. A husband's duty is to stand beside his wife at her weakest moment. Michael had already failed that test, and something told me This was only the beginning of what I would uncover. When Anna drifted into another fitful sleep, I slipped out into the hallway. The quiet hum of machines and soft shuffle of nurses filled the air, but inside me, a storm raged. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Michael's number. My thumb hovered for a moment, then I pressed call. 1 ring, 2 rings. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. By the 3rd attempt, I left a message, my voice sharp. Michael, it's Harley. Your wife is in labor. Your child is about to be born. Get here, now. I lowered the phone, my pulse hammering in my ears. I stared at the dark screen, waiting, daring it to light up with a return call. Nothing. I tried again, and again. Each time the same cold silence. Each time the same hollow recording of his voice, promising to call back when he could. My grip tightened on the phone until my knuckles whitened. Where was he? What could possibly be more important than this moment? I leaned against the wall, forcing myself to breathe slowly. Rage wouldn't help Anna. I needed clarity. But every unanswered call was another nail in the coffin of his excuses. A doctor passed by, offering me a nod of polite recognition. I nodded back, but my mind was elsewhere. I replayed every interaction I'd had with Michael, every slick smile, every fast-talking promise. He always had a story, always had a reason. But tonight, no story would ever be good enough. When I returned to Anna's room, she stirred and glanced at me with tired eyes. "Did you reach him?" she asked softly. I forced a calm smile, though my voice was low. "Not yet, sweetheart. But don't you worry. I'll make sure you're not alone." She nodded faintly, relief flickering across her face. But inside I knew the truth. Michael wasn't answering because he didn't want to. And whatever he was doing instead, it wasn't innocent. Anna's breathing was uneven when I returned to her bedside. She tried to smile, but it was the kind of smile that fools no one, not a father, not me. I sat down and gently took her hand again. "How are you holding up?" I asked. Her eyes darted to the empty chair and she whispered, "It's hard, Dad." Harder than I thought it would be. I brushed her hair back from her damp forehead. "You're stronger than you know, but you shouldn't have to be this strong alone." Her lips trembled. For a moment she looked like the little girl who once crawled into my bed after a thunderstorm, clutching her blanket, terrified of the lightning. My heart ached. She took a shaky breath. "Michael, he's been distant. Ever since the pregnancy got harder. He says he's stressed, says he's doing his best for us." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. Her voice cracked. "But sometimes I feel like I'm too much for him, that maybe he regrets." She cut herself off, swallowing hard. "Anna," I said firmly, squeezing her hand, "don't you ever believe that. You are not too much. You are his wife. You are carrying his child. And if he can't see what a blessing that is, then the failure is his, not yours." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling silently down her cheeks. "I just didn't want to worry you, Dad. You've already been through so much since Mom." Her voice trailed off, and I felt the sting of Martha's absence all over again. She was right. Losing her mother had broken me in ways I never admitted. But that wasn't Anna's burden to carry. I leaned closer, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Sweetheart, your only job right now is bringing that baby into the world. Leave the rest to me. You hear me?" She nodded weakly, her tears glistening in the dim hospital light. But in her eyes, I still saw it. That flicker of doubt, that shadow of fear. She knew Michael wasn't coming, and I feared she also knew why. Anna drifted back into a restless sleep, her breath shallow but steady. I sat quietly, watching the monitors blink, each green line pulsing like a reminder that life was still fighting inside her. On the side table, her phone buzzed faintly with a low battery warning. The screen lit just long enough for me to see Michael's name in her recent calls, unanswered. My chest tightened. I hesitated, then reached for it. I knew it wasn't right, but desperate times make you cross lines you never thought you would. I keyed in her passcode, the same 4 digits she'd once told me years ago. "Just in case, Dad." The screen unlocked. My gut twisted. I opened her messages. Dozens of texts glared back at me, all from Anna to Michael. "Where are you? Please, I need you here. The contractions are getting worse. I'm scared." Every single one met with silence. No reply, no reassurance, nothing. I scrolled further, and the silence stretched for days, weeks even. The last message he had sent was short and cold. "I'll be busy. Don't wait up." I clenched the phone in my hand, my jaw locking tight. My daughter had begged him, pleaded with him, and he had ignored her. I nearly set the phone down when another conversation caught my eye. Messages from one of his friends, the kind of friend who never brought anything good with him. "Vegas has been wild. Big wins tonight, man. Can't believe your luck." Vegas. My stomach dropped. My worst suspicions started to take shape. While Anna fought through contractions, terrified and alone, her husband wasn't just gone. He was living it up in Las Vegas, gambling as if nothing else in the world mattered. My hands trembled as I set the phone back on the table, careful not to wake her. I stared at her sleeping face, at the tears dried on her cheeks. She had been calling for help, and the man who promised to protect her had left her on red. I sat in that stiff hospital chair, my fists tight against my knees, my mind racing. The messages had already told me enough, but I needed proof, hard evidence, something even Anna couldn't deny when she tried to defend him. I picked up her phone again, scrolling past the unanswered texts until I saw a notification still open in one of her apps. Social media. My thumb hovered, then tapped. Michael's profile glared back at me. Smug grin, flashy clothes, the image of a man who lived for appearances. And at the top of the screen a glowing red circle. A new story posted. I tapped it. My blood froze. There he was, Michael himself, sitting at a casino table in Las Vegas. Chips stacked in front of him, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his arms slung over the chair like he owned the world. Behind him, the neon glow of slot machines painted the scene. The caption read, "Living Big in Vegas." I swiped to the next story. More images. A hotel suite with champagne bottles lined up on the table. Michael laughing with friends I didn't recognize. Sunglasses on indoors. The picture of arrogance. The timestamp was clear. All of it had been posted within the last 24 hours. I leaned back in my chair, the phone shaking in my hands. So this was his work. This was why he hadn't answered Anna's calls. While she lay here, pale and sweating through the hardest hours of her life, he was gambling away money and bragging online. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to storm into Vegas myself and drag him back by the collar. But I forced myself to stay calm. Rage wouldn't help Anna, not now. I placed the phone back on the table, careful not to wake her. My heart pounded with a single truth. Michael had abandoned her, not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of choice. And he was about to learn that choices come with consequences. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor beside Anna's bed. She stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, and I brushed her hand gently, reassuring her, even though she couldn't hear me. That's when my own phone buzzed in my pocket. A bank notification. I frowned, pulling it out. The alert glowed on the screen. Payment due. Loan account, Anna Wilson. My chest tightened. Loan account. My daughter didn't have any loans. She was careful, disciplined. Every dollar she earned went toward preparing for this baby. She wouldn't risk her future like that. I tapped the notification, my stomach sinking as the account details opened. There it was in black and white, a series of loans tied to Anna's name, thousands of dollars, and the dates. They all lined up with Michael's Vegas trips. A sick realization washed over me. He hadn't just gambled away his own money. He had taken loans in her name, shackling her with debt she never agreed to. I scrolled through the transactions, each one a dagger to my chest. Las Vegas Casino, $8,000. Luxury hotel suite, $2,400. Private poker room buy-in, $5,500. Each charge was more brazen than the last. My hands trembled as I snapped screenshots, saving every detail. My engineer's mind switched into gear, methodical, precise. This wasn't just a betrayal, this was fraud. And it wasn't going to stay hidden. I looked back at Anna, her face peaceful in sleep. She had no idea. She believed Michael was working, believed he was providing. She had been defending him with every ounce of her loyalty. But the truth was brutal. While she carried his child, he was burying her in debt. I clenched my jaw, shoving the phone back into my pocket. Enough was enough. I couldn't let her wake up one day not only heartbroken, but ruined financially. Michael thought he was clever, living large while my daughter suffered. But he had forgotten one thing. I was still her father, and I was about to shut him down. I stepped quietly into the hallway, phone clutched in my hand. My chest was burning, but my mind was focused. If Michael thought he could gamble away my daughter's future without consequences, he had underestimated me. I opened the banking app again and scrolled further back. The numbers blurred at first, but then the pattern became clear. His spending wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, a lifestyle funded by deceit. The charges read like a playbook of arrogance. High roller poker room, Las Vegas, $12,000. Private jet services, $4,800. Beverly Hills, luxury auto rental, $3,200. Rodeo Drive jewelry, $7,500. Each line stabbed deeper than the last. He had drained thousands in a matter of weeks, and every cent was tied back to Anna's name, her credit, her future. I took screenshots of everything, each image saved into a growing folder labeled simply proof, transaction IDs, dates, locations, every ugly detail. The sickening part wasn't just the amounts, it was the timing. While Anna was at doctor's appointments, he was booking flights. While she texted him from the hospital, begging him to come, he was dining at steakhouses with friends. While she carried his child, he was carrying chips across a casino floor. My jaw clenched until it ached. I thought of Martha, how she used to study people so carefully, how she warned me about Michael's charm. "There's something off about him," she had said more than once. "One day that smile will cost us." I had brushed it off then, thinking I was being protective, but she had seen what I didn't want to. Now staring at the mountain of evidence, I wished I had listened sooner. I locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket, my decision firming like steel. Michael had gambled with the wrong family, and I was done watching him play. I leaned against the cool hospital wall, the phone heavy in my pocket, my heart heavier still. The evidence was undeniable now, but anger wasn't the only thing coursing through me. Guilt gnawed at my insides, because Martha had seen this coming. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I was back in our old living room. Martha sat across from me, her knitting needles clicking softly in her hands. Anna and Michael had just left after Sunday dinner. Michael had been all smiles, full of charm, talking about new business ventures and opportunities. But when the door shut, Martha's expression hardened. "Harley," she said quietly, "there's something about him I don't trust." I'd chuckled then, brushing it off. "He's ambitious, that's all. A little flashy, maybe, but he loves her." She set her knitting down and gave me that look, the one that cut through all my defenses. Love doesn't look like that. Love doesn't brag about money while your daughter does the dishes. Love doesn't dodge responsibility with a smile. I had waved her concerns away, stubborn as ever. He'll settle down. He'll take care of her. Now, standing in the dim hospital corridor, I realized how blind I'd been. She had known. She had seen the cracks in his character, the selfishness hidden beneath the charm, and I, so desperate to believe Anna had found happiness, had ignored my wife's wisdom. My chest ached. If Martha were alive, she would have pressed harder, demanded answers, maybe even saved Anna from all of this. But she was gone, and I was left holding the consequences of my own denial. I whispered into the quiet hallway, as if Martha were still there. "You were right, love. You saw him for what he was. I should have listened." I straightened, swallowing the lump in my throat. Regret was useless now. What mattered was action. Martha had warned me about Michael. Now I would honor her by making sure he could never hurt our daughter again. When I walked back into Anna's room, she stirred and looked up at me with tired eyes. I forced a smile, but inside, my insides churned like a storm. "Dad," she whispered, "are you okay?" I nodded quickly. "Of course. I'm just worried about you, sweetheart. That's all." She smiled faintly, and her eyes fluttered shut again. I sank into the chair beside her, watching her chest rise and fall, listening to the soft hum of machines keeping track of every heartbeat. But the longer I sat there, the more my jaw tightened. I wanted to shout, to break something, to march straight into Las Vegas and drag Michael out of whatever casino he was hiding in. I wanted him to feel every ounce of fear and pain he'd left for Anna to carry alone. Instead, I sat perfectly still, my fists clenched tight in my lap. I remembered the words she had whispered earlier. "Promise me my baby will be safe." That was the anchor keeping me steady. If I let my anger spill over, if I let her see the fury boiling inside me, it would only make her feel weaker, more afraid. So I swallowed it. Every time she opened her eyes, I was calm, gentle, reassuring. Every time she drifted back to sleep, I turned my face away, my teeth grinding until my jaw ached. The rage wasn't just about Michael's betrayal. It was about all the little things I had ignored, all the red flags Martha had seen, all the chances I had to intervene sooner. But the time for regret had passed. Now, anger could serve a purpose. Anger could sharpen my focus. I leaned closer to Anna, brushing her hair gently from her forehead. "Rest now," I whispered. "You won't have to carry this alone any longer. Not him, not his lies, not his debts. I'll take care of everything." She sighed softly, her hand still curled around mine, and fell into deeper sleep. I sat there in the dim light, silent as stone, my rage hidden behind a mask of calm. But inside, I made a vow. Michael had played his last game. When Anna finally drifted into deeper sleep, I slipped quietly from the room and found a quiet corner of the hallway. My hands still trembled, not from fear, but from the fury coursing through me. I needed to use it, not waste it. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd taken. The bank transactions, the loan statements, the social media posts. Each image felt like another brick in the wall I was building against Michael. But I knew rage wasn't enough. Rage could be dismissed. Proof could not. I created a folder in my phone and labeled it with a single word: proof. One by one, I organized the files. Screenshots of loans, each marked with date and amount. Transaction histories showing the trail from Vegas casinos to luxury hotels. Photos of him smiling with drinks in his hands, while Anna begged him to come home. I even opened my notepad app and began typing a timeline. Anna's contractions began, unanswered texts. Michael's posts from Vegas, timestamps aligned with her messages. Bank withdrawals, matched nights he was seen at the casino. Piece by piece, the puzzle fit together. He wasn't just careless. He wasn't just absent. He was deliberate. He had built his life on lies, using Anna's name as the foundation, gambling away her future for his selfish pleasures. The more I worked, the calmer I felt. Not because my anger was gone, but because it had found direction. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just a bystander. I was her father. And fathers don't sit quietly while their daughters are destroyed. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and whispered to myself, "Michael thinks he's untouchable. But I've spent my life solving problems, and I just solved him." I straightened, squared my shoulders, and returned to Anna's room. She was still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the battle being fought for her future, just outside her door, and she didn't need to know, not yet. All she needed to know was that her father was here, and I was already building the case that would end Michael once and for all. I found a quiet alcove near the hospital chapel, a place where voices seemed to hush themselves. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I hadn't dialed in years: David Harris. David and I had gone to college together. He became a lawyer, I became an engineer. We hadn't spoken much since Martha's funeral, but I knew one thing about David. When he fought to win. I pressed call. After a few rings, his familiar voice came through, groggy but alert. "Harley, it's been a long time." "David," I said, my tone steady, though my chest was tight. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't serious. I need your help. It's about Anna." The silence on the other end stretched just a moment before he answered firmly. "Tell me everything." I explained in clipped sentences. The hospital, Anna in labor, Michael gone. Then the loans, the charges, the evidence. David swore under his breath. "That's fraud, Harley. If he's been signing in her name, she's not liable for any of it. But you'll need proof. Solid proof." "I have it," I said, glancing at the folder labeled proof on my phone. Screenshots, transactions, even social media posts from Vegas. "That's a start," David replied. "Don't confront him directly. Not yet. Keep documenting. Once the baby is here and Anna is stable, we'll move fast. File fraud claims, freeze accounts, and if he tries custody threats..." He paused. "Trust me, no judge will give him a child with that trail of evidence." My shoulders eased slightly. For the first time that night, I felt like there was a path forward. "Thank you, David. I just need her protected. She's already been through enough." "You're doing the right thing," he said firmly. "Stay calm. Gather everything. I'll be ready when you call." When the line went dead, I tucked the phone into my pocket and let out a long breath. The rage inside me was still burning, but now it had a compass. Michael thought he could gamble with my daughter's life. He was about to learn what it felt like to be outplayed. The hospital was quiet in the early hours, the kind of silence that makes every decision feel heavier. I sat in the dimly lit family waiting room, phone in hand, staring at the list of charges one last time. Enough was enough. I dialed the number for my bank's emergency fraud line. After a brief pause, a calm voice answered. First National Security Services, this is Karen. How can I assist you today? This is Harley Wilson, I said firmly. I need to revoke authorized access on my account immediately. There's been fraud, urgent fraud. She verified my information, asked the usual security questions. My patience was thin, but I kept my voice steady. I couldn't afford mistakes. Finally, she confirmed. Yes, sir. I see multiple recent transactions tied to a secondary user. Is that the issue? My jaw clenched. That's exactly the issue. Remove his name, freeze every card, and block future access. I want him cut off. Now. Karen tapped at her keyboard. It's processing. Done. His cards will no longer work. Any attempted transactions will be declined. I leaned back, exhaling through clenched teeth. The knot in my chest loosened slightly. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. She hesitated, then asked gently, Do you want fraud reports opened, sir? If he's been using funds illegally, we can pursue this formally. Yes, I said without hesitation. Open them all. I'll provide documentation. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the dark screen of my phone. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had struck a blow back. I could almost picture him, Michael, sitting smug at a blackjack table, about to slide his card across. And then the smirk fading. The card declined. Another attempt. Declined again, confusion turning into panic. The crowd around him watching. The King of Vegas reduced to a fool. It wasn't just about the money. It was about stripping him of the power he thought he had over Anna. And this was only the beginning. It didn't take long. Barely half an hour after I ended the call with the bank, my phone buzzed again. A new notification lit the screen. Transaction declined. $5,000, Las Vegas Casino. I stared at it, a slow, grim smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Another buzz. Transaction declined. $2,300, luxury hotel suite. And then another. Transaction declined. $1,200, VIP bar tab. Each alert felt like a hammer striking against his arrogance. Somewhere across the desert, Michael was standing red-faced at a counter, fumbling with his wallet, pretending there must be some mistake. I could almost hear his slick excuses, the fake charm in his voice as he tried to talk his way out of the embarrassment. But charm doesn't pay the bill. I leaned back in the stiff hospital chair, the phone glowing in my hand, and for the first time that night, I let out a quiet laugh. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was the sound of justice beginning to stir. The notifications kept coming, one after another, painting a picture of a man's empire collapsing in real time. Casino chips he couldn't cash, bottles of champagne he couldn't buy, hotel rooms suddenly out of reach. Each declined was more than a failed purchase. It was proof that Michael wasn't in control anymore. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, glancing at Anna. She was sleeping still, her breathing steady, her face calm for the first time in hours. She had no idea what was happening hundreds of miles away, and she didn't need to. All she needed was rest. All she needed was to know, when she woke, that she wasn't alone. But I knew. I knew Michael's kingdom of lies was starting to crumble, and I intended to watch it fall, piece by piece. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, vibrating against the chair. I pulled it out, and there it was on the screen, Michael. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, letting him stew in the mess he'd made. But then I thought of Anna, her whispered plea, "Promise me my baby will be safe." This was part of that promise. I swiped to answer. "Hello, Michael." His voice came through frantic, angry, edged with panic. "What the hell is going on, Harley? My cards keep getting declined. I'm standing here in front of people I know, and I look like an idiot. Fix this." I leaned back, letting the silence hang a moment before I answered. "Sounds like you're having a rough night." "This isn't funny," he snapped. "I've got business deals here, clients. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut him off, my tone flat as steel. "While your wife is in labor, you're in Las Vegas, gambling with money you stole from me, and worse, with loans you took out in Anna's name. Do you think I wouldn't find out?" On the other end, I heard the noise of the casino. Music, chatter, the clatter of chips, and beneath it, his shaky breath. "You don't know what you're talking about," he tried, but the confidence was gone. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said coldly. "I have every receipt, every screenshot, every post. I know where you've been, who you've been with, and what you've spent. And I know one thing more. You'll never use Anna's name to destroy her again." He lowered his voice, desperate now. "Look, just give me access back, all right? Just enough to get through tonight. Then we can work this out." I almost laughed. "No, Michael, there's nothing to work out. You chose Vegas over your wife. You chose gambling over your family. And now you get to live with that choice." Before he could answer, I ended the call. The sharp click of finality echoed louder than any words. For the first time, I felt control shifting back where it belonged. To me and to Anna. The phone rang again not 10 minutes later. Same name, same desperation. Against my better judgment, I answered. Michael's voice was harsher this time, stripped of the fake charm. "Listen, old man, you think you're clever? Cutting me off? You don't get to decide how I handle my marriage or my child." I stayed silent, letting him spit his venom. He continued, his tone darkening. "You think Anna will leave me? She won't. And if she tries, I'll make sure I take the baby. Courts listen to fathers too, you know. I'll drag her through hell if I have to." My grip on the phone tightened, but my voice remained calm, low, steady. "Michael, I've heard a lot of stupid things in my life, but that may be the stupidest. You've abandoned your wife during labor. You've stolen her name for loans. You've gambled away money that wasn't yours, and I have proof of every single bit of it." He scoffed, though I could hear the crack in his voice. "You don't scare me. Judges care about money, about stability, and I'm the one making money." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Money? You can't even pay for your own bar tab right now. I'm watching every one of your transactions fail in real time. Do you think a judge will side with a man who can't keep a card from declining in a casino?" For a moment, the line was quiet, except for the muffled chaos behind him. Chips clattering, voices rising, someone asking him if he was going to pay. Then his voice dropped to a hiss. "You're going to regret crossing me." "No," I said firmly. "The only one who's going to regret anything is you. You had a wife who loved you and a child about to be born, and you threw it all away for cards and dice. You don't scare me, Michael. You disgust me." I ended the call, blocking his number this time. The quiet that followed wasn't just relief. It was victory, small but real. Michael had played his last threat, and I had already won. The hours blurred into one another, a haze of beeping monitors, hurried footsteps, and the quiet groans of my daughter fighting through each contraction. I never let go of her hand, not once. "Dad," she whispered weakly between breaths, her eyes glistening with pain and exhaustion. "I'm here," I said, pressing her hand to my chest. "I'm right here, sweetheart. You're not alone." The nurses moved swiftly around us, adjusting machines, offering gentle instructions. Then the doctor entered, his voice calm but firm. "It's time." My heart leapt into my throat. Anna gritted her teeth, pushing with everything she had left in her. I whispered encouragements, my voice breaking with emotion. "You can do this. You're stronger than you think. Just a little more." Minutes stretched like hours. Her cries pierced the room, and I felt helpless, wishing I could take the pain for her, wishing Martha was here to hold her other hand. I whispered a prayer into the sterile air, begging for strength to pass to her, and then the sound I'd been waiting for filled the room, a cry, sharp, powerful, alive. The nurse lifted a tiny bundle, swaddled in white, and handed her gently to Anna. Tears streamed down my daughter's cheeks as she cradled her child for the first time. "Dad, it's a girl," she whispered, her voice trembling. I bent down, my vision blurred with tears, and kissed Anna's damp forehead. Then I looked at the baby, so small, so perfect. Her tiny fists clenched, as if she was ready to fight the world already. My chest heaved with a mixture of grief and joy. Grief that Martha wasn't here to see this miracle. Joy that despite all the betrayal, all the pain, life had triumphed. Anna looked at me, her voice soft but sure. "Dad, meet your granddaughter." I reached out with trembling hands, holding her for the first time. Warmth spread through me, banishing the cold fury that had lived in my chest all night. I whispered into her tiny ear, Welcome, little one. You'll never know abandonment, not while I live. Weeks later, I found myself sitting in a courtroom beside Anna. She held her baby close, her arms wrapped protectively around the tiny bundle. Her face was pale, but steady, her eyes sharper than I'd seen in months. She was ready. Across the aisle sat Michael. His suit was wrinkled, his charm dimmed, his eyes darting nervously as he whispered with his lawyer. Gone was the smug smile he wore in those casino photos. He looked smaller now, like a man who knew his house of cards was about to fall. The judge called the session to order. Papers shuffled, voices echoed, and then it began. Michael's lawyer tried to paint him as a hard-working husband under stress, a man who had made mistakes but loved his family. But then David, my old friend, my ally, stood. Calm, deliberate, he opened the folder we had built together. Proof. Transaction records flashed across the courtroom screen. Thousands drained into casinos, hotels, luxury rentals, loan documents forged with Anna's name, signatures she never gave, screenshots of Michael's social media, bragging from Las Vegas while Anna's messages begged him to come home. Each piece was a dagger, each page a nail in his coffin. The judge's face hardened as the evidence piled up. Michael squirmed in his seat, whispering frantically, but no charm could save him now. When it was over, the judge spoke firmly. The loans are fraudulent. Mrs. Wilson bears no responsibility. Custody of the child remains solely with her. As for Mr. Wilson, the court finds his actions reprehensible. Anna let out a shaky breath, clutching her daughter tighter. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of freedom. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She looked at me, her lips trembling into a smile. Across the aisle, Michael slumped in his chair, his face pale, his future shattered. The empire he thought he'd built had crumbled under the weight of truth. For the first time, justice wasn't just an idea. It was real, standing on our side. When the gavel came down, it was as if an invisible chain snapped in the air. Anna slumped back in her chair, holding her baby tight against her chest. For the first time since that terrible night in the hospital, I saw her shoulders relax. "It's over," she whispered, almost in disbelief. I turned toward her, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over. He can't hurt you anymore." Her lips trembled, and then the tears came. But these were not tears of fear or betrayal. They were tears of relief. She kissed the top of her daughter's head, rocking her gently, as if reminding herself that they were safe, that their future was their own again. "Dad," she said softly, looking at me through glistening eyes. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you." I squeezed her hand. "You never have to do anything without me. Not while I'm alive. You and that little girl are my whole world now." Across the courtroom, Michael muttered angrily to his lawyer, but it didn't matter anymore. His words had no power. His threats meant nothing. He had gambled everything away, and now all he had left were debts and shame. The judge's words echoed in my mind. "The loans are fraudulent. Mrs. Wilson bears no responsibility." Those sentences were more powerful than any revenge I could have dreamed of. They cleared Anna's name. They gave her a clean slate. As we left the courtroom, sunlight spilled through the tall windows, and I felt its warmth on my face. Anna looked at me, her baby nestled against her chest, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. A real smile, not forced, not weary. "I feel free," she said, almost laughing through her tears. And in that moment, I knew. We had won. Not just in court, but in life. A year can change everything. I sat on the porch of my old house in Texas, the rocking chair creaking beneath me. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and blooming magnolias. In my arms, my granddaughter dozed peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the summer breeze. Inside, through the open window, I could hear Anna's laughter. She was in the kitchen, talking with neighbors who had stopped by to see the baby. The sound of her voice, light and unburdened, was like music I hadn't heard in years. I thought back to that night in the hospital, the fear in her eyes, the emptiness of the chair beside her bed, and then I looked at her now, smiling, strong, free. Michael was nothing more than a shadow in the rear-view mirror of our lives. His debts had swallowed him whole, his reputation ruined beyond repair. We never heard from him again, except through rumors, whispers of more gambling, more failure. But he was no longer our problem. Our world had become smaller, simpler, and better. Anna worked part-time from home, pouring her love into raising her daughter. Neighbors often stopped by with food, gifts, or just to hold the baby. There was community, there was love, and there was peace. I rocked gently, gazing down at the little one in my arms. She opened her eyes for a moment, bright, curious, innocent, and reached her tiny hand toward my chin. I kissed her fingers, my heart swelling. "You'll never know the kind of pain your mother did," I whispered, "because she's stronger than anyone I know, and I'll be here every step of the way." The sky turned gold with the setting sun. For the first time in years, I felt whole. The battles were behind us. The betrayals were buried. What lay ahead was life, pure and simple. And in that quiet evening, with my granddaughter's warmth against me and my daughter's laughter drifting through the window, I knew Martha would have been proud. The house was quiet that night, long after the neighbors had gone home and Anna had tucked the baby into her crib. I sat on the porch alone, staring up at the stars. They glittered against the velvet sky, and for a moment I imagined Martha there among them, smiling down. So much had changed in a year. The pain, the betrayal, the courtroom battles, they were all behind us now. What remained was something stronger. My daughter had found her strength. My granddaughter had brought new light into our lives. And I had found my purpose again. Michael had tried to bury us in debt and shame, but instead he buried himself. His choices had caught up to him, and there was no escaping them. That was his story now, one of ruin. Ours, on the other hand, was one of survival, of love, of new beginnings. I thought of that empty chair in the hospital room, the sight that had nearly broken me, and then I thought of the chair beside me now, filled by a little girl who would grow up knowing nothing but love and security. That, I realized, was the truest revenge of all. I whispered into the night, as though Martha could still hear me. I kept my promise. She's safe. They both are. The wind rustled through the trees, soft and warm, almost like an answer. I rose slowly, my knees stiff, and went back inside. Anna was asleep on the couch, her daughter curled up against her. I pulled a blanket over them, watching their peaceful faces, and in that moment, I knew my role wasn't finished. It never would be. Fathers don't stop protecting their children, not when they're small, not when they're grown, not even when they've become parents themselves. I bent down, kissed my granddaughter's forehead, and whispered the words that had carried me through every storm. "You'll never face the world alone, not as long as I draw breath." And with that promise, I finally felt at peace.